And hello, America. Hello, world. This is Jake Baker, and this is the Baker Report. We're glad you're here. Welcome to 2024. For many Americans, 2023 was a pretty rough year. A desperate Biden administration is prosecuting and persecuting J6ers. 4 indictments of a former president, Donald Trump, like some third world banana republic run by some smiling, crooked potentate. The border is a treasonous disaster aimed at cheap wage labor slaves for global corporations. Meanwhile, crime from illegals is soaring as our medical and financial systems, as well as our justice system, is being overloaded and being deliberately crushed under the weight of those who would destroy the country in defense of a global reset and global governance. And finally, there's the economy. We're being savaged by inflation. Our banking system is on the verge of collapse. Both the domestic and global economies are in tatters. And all of it is balanced on a razor's edge right now. If the dollar were to collapse, the entire world would slide into a depression such as the world and history has never seen. And that, by the way, could easily happen as Russia and China implement their new economic system. Remember, in pre-war Germany, their marks were nearly useless. Could it happen again here? You bet it could, and it may already be happening. We already might be in that slide even as we speak. Scripture tells us to be wise. God didn't give us a spirit of fear, but he also didn't give us a spirit of stupid. He gave us both wisdom as well as a warning, an example of how we're to operate as individuals in our lives and as a society. He told us to shun unjust weights and measures. Folks, our fiat currency system has become history's greatest Ponzi scheme. It's an unjust series of weights and measures. So, now, it's time to be wise and learn how to protect ourselves from what I believe must certainly come. And that is what we're going to be talking about today with our special guest, David Roy Newby. He's an author of 2 books, an entrepreneur. He's spoken to millionaires and billionaires from around the globe. But there is one billionaire that he speaks of that was richer and wiser than all of the others probably put together. And David will tell us about him on this edition of the Baker Report. Folks, there is a way to use the system while protecting yourself from the system. You're going to love this program, and I know it's going to be a blessing to you. So stay tuned. Learn how to protect yourself and prosper in the coming economic storms and unstoppable volatility that's barreling down the tracks at us right now. All of that and a whole lot more right after this short time out. Several months ago, my wife of about 40 years, Katie, became desperately ill. She was bedfast, could barely speak, and even breathing was exhausting. We saw specialists after specialists who had no idea what was wrong, and the best they could do was give her drugs from Big Pharma, probably made in China, so she could die more comfortably. But I didn't want surrender. I wanted to bring shock and awe to whatever this was. And by the grace of God, I was led to Dr. Houck, affectionately known as Pappy. He put her on an all-natural formula that he developed over 30 years that declared war on disease, toxins, viruses, bacteria, heavy metals, and parasites, which I'm told are the root of about 90% of all illnesses, including liver, kidney, lung, and heart problems, as well as dementia. Well, within a couple of weeks, she was up and about, and within about a month, she was back to normal and asking me to take out the garbage. That's when I knew I had to bring this formula to everyone who wanted preemptive wellness and to those who were desperate to find their road back to wellness again. So I created Sanus One for the Wellness and Bio Cleanse formula. Obviously, no medicine can heal you, but our Wellness and Bio Cleanse formula attacks all those things that are crippling your immune system. It's designed to clear them out, and that allows your immune system to do what it was designed to do: heal your body. I am 100% convinced that this works. It gave me my Katie back. I'm looking forward to discovering whatever is in the path ahead of us with Katie by my side for years to come. So, today, right now, you need to protect your wellness or find the road back to wellness with our one-of-a-kind Sanus One Wellness and Bio Cleanse formula. You cannot get this unique bio-sized formula anywhere else in the world. visit our website at sanusone.com. That's sanusone.com.
You finally took the plunge and started that video blog, or podcast. And it looks great. So you go down the checklist. 1. You talk about lots of important stuff. 2. The set looks incredible. 3. You are already lining up amazing guests. 4. Wait, what's 4 again? Oh right, you need viewers. You know, people to actually watch the videos you're uploading. Those people that make it possible to monetize your podcast or video, or bring in customers. So, how do you get viewers? Well, you can hire some big ad agency, but to them, you are still just a small client. You can call every member of your family, and their families, or you can contact Elite Power Pros. We'll tailor a custom plan that meets your needs, finds your audience, and keeps your budget in mind during the whole process. Visit us today at ElitePowerPros.com. That's ElitePowerPros.com. I don't know about you, but I'm constantly searching the internet, YouTube, and Rumble for something to watch that will give me news and events. But I really want more than that. I want to know what it all means. I want to know what's going on behind the scenes, and I'm looking for something that'll tell me how all of this relates to the times, and the unfolding of Bible prophecy. I can find news, I can find preaching, but finding someone who can put it all together has been frustrating. But a few weeks ago, I stumbled across the Baker Report with Dr. Jake Baker. He has Glenn Beck passion, the insight of a Rusher Tucker, and a prophetic understanding like a Jonathan Cahn. Such a refreshing find. His program comes out every Friday afternoon, but the archives are available anytime at rumble.com. Then search for his channel, The Baker Report. That channel again is The Baker Report. It is amazing.
And it is such a pleasure to welcome to the program David Newby. David, welcome to the Baker Report. Glad you're with us today, particularly as we go into 2024 with all of the, potential economic crises on the horizon. It's good to know that we can talk to somebody who's got a kind of a handle on this.
Well, it's my pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much for having me, Jake.
Yeah, let's jump right into a couple of problems that we're facing. Number one, we've got not just here in the United States, although especially here in the United States, but we have global debt that is just absolutely astounding, David. It's just something that is almost hard to understand or even get your arms around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the debt level is, we're at unprecedented, uncharted waters right now. For people who are not big students of history, going back to 71, Nixon closed the gold window. Before that, for the last 4,000 years, almost all currencies that maintain the value were backed by gold. Every single time a country has gone off of a gold standard, they call that fiat, that currency has gone to zero in value. So 100% success ratio. So every currency in the world is fiat right now, and that's not sustainable. And so just to get people maybe in the West or Singapore, more developed economies, maybe they have not experienced a major recession like major, like the 1930s depression of the U.S. If you look back in time, even just to the 90s, I lived in the Philippines as a kid. I went there December 97 with my wife for our honeymoon after we got married. And I was there. We got there basically 1st of December, left like the 27th. In those 3 weeks, the peso to dollar ratio went from like 35 to 41. So we had converted $3,000 from dollars into pesos, and we had like $2,000 left. We only ended up spending $1,000 for the whole month, traveling around and visiting relatives, and also our honeymoon. And in the middle of all of that, it's like we lost 30% of our purchasing power in 3 weeks. So when you have a lot of unsustainable debt and money that's not backed by any real value, things get more and more expensive just very, very quickly. It can happen seemingly overnight. So for those of us in developed economies, it's very wise that we make adjustments and ask God for wisdom, seek divine guidance on how to best protect and preserve our purchasing power.
Well, and of course, one of the big problems with, and I won't speak to the rest of the world because it's too complex, but for America,
Hmm.
um, God says there's a special judgment for those who use unfair weights and measures. Well, when you have an economy based on a dollar, and the dollar has nothing to support it except the full faith and credit of the American government, which has over the last 50 years proven quite faithless, uh,
Hmm.
it really begins to take a toll on the lives of Americans because we talk about inflation, but there is no real inflation. The dollar is plummeting in value is the problem.
Hmm.
It is just not holding any value, and that's, in my estimation, only going to get worse over the next several months and years.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I was talking to an economist with three-letter agency connections yesterday, and he was talking about, since 71, since Nixon closed the gold window, there's been two things that have preserved the dollar. One is the petrodollar, Saudi agreeing to sell all their oil in dollars, and our military. Well, our military is being weakened. Now we're having people saying diversity is the key to a strong military. And it's like, no, the military's job is to defend the homeland, and that's it, not do all these crazy things. So our government's military is getting weaker by the day, sadly. And just today, Saudi Arabia just officially became a member of BRICS Plus. This is a Brazil, Russia, India, China block of countries. And by the way, another 40 countries want to join BRICS because they want to go back to some type of gold standard. They realize the petrodollar's days are limited. So this is just I'm an American. I thank God that I was privileged to be born in America. I've met people who literally make $1.50 a day and sleep on the sidewalk in my wife's hometown of the Philippines. And I grew up in the poorest barrio of Metro Manila, the capital of the Philippines, as a child. So it's really important for us in wealthier economies to have the thankfulness for where we are, and to realize we should resist normalcy bias. Just because our economy has been strong for most of our lifetimes, going back post World War II, it doesn't mean it's going to stay that way forever. So a wise person, going back to your unjust weights and measures, the central banking system as it stands is not sustainable, and the world will go back to some type of gold standard one way or the other. Usually when the end of a system is happening, certain countries will fight that tooth and nail and be very unhappy about it. But as individuals, we can wisely put our money into vehicles that are backed by sound money. And really the only real money is gold. Every currency printed by a government is currency. It's not money. The only thing that's really money is gold and silver. And that's actually right in the U.S. Constitution. The only thing that you use as lawful money is gold and silver. So it's really important to understand history and resist the normalcy bias of the last 50 years of American prosperity that we've all been blessed to live through, if a viewer is in America or another developed country.
Yeah, and quite honestly, when you look at even the petrodollar, how it came about as a result of Nixon taking us off the gold standard. The dollar was plummeting, so he sent Henry Kissinger to the Saudis and said, hey, listen, the dollar's going to plummet. If we go down, you go down. So here's what you need to do. You need to declare the dollar the petrodollar, and we will promise you that we'll give you protection for the rest of forever and ever. So that's how we survived the taking over the gold standard, but it's a downward spiral, has been ever since. Now, when I was a kid, a movie was a dime. Movies are what, $12-14 now, and not because they've gotten a lot better. So the dollar has faded, debt has increased. You mentioned that economies are held up by the strength of their dollar or their currency and their military, and our president commander in chief is saying that the key to the army is diversity. Well, that's the exact opposite of the truth. Every army requires one thing: uniformity. If you get out of uniformity and everybody's doing their own thing, you no longer have an army, you have a mob, and that's different. So we're in trouble on a lot of fronts. I think it's pretty obvious to all of us that the dollar is spinning out of control. You mentioned Russia and China creating BRICS, Shanghai Cooperation Agreement, and brick and mortar. Belt and Road program. Right. All of that is being done to sidetrack the U.S. SWIFT system, which is what moves money around the world. But Russia and China, when Biden decided he was going to weaponize our SWIFT system against Russia, that really propelled them to a fast resolve of that situation, and that was to create their own SWIFT system outside the U.S. And it looks like at this point in time, about 72-73% of the entire globe is on board with that program.
Yeah, I think number one, if you just look at, I really agree with what Ron Paul said. America is no longer a capitalist society; we're a corporatist society, meaning the top 500 corporations are writing the laws and handing them to senators, Congress people, and they basically maybe change 3 lines and put their signature on it. So it's important for us to realize what system we're in. If you look at traditional capitalism, where there is a level playing field, that has produced the most wealth for global economies in all of history. So knowing that background, it's important to realize that sound money is the foundation of a strong economy, meaning your currency is backed by gold and silver. So I think it's really important to realize that there is wisdom in what the BRICS countries want to do, which is to go back to some type of gold standard. They just announced this past summer when they were having their meeting in South Africa that they agreed upon an initial framework. If you look at how the EU was created, it can take a good 5-7 years for countries to come up with a standard that they all agree upon. So us as individual investors, realizing 2/3 of all the currency that's ever been printed in the history of the world was printed since 2020 when COVID shutdown policy started. So inflation will likely get worse because there's just so many more dollars, euros, yen floating around to buy the same goods. So knowing that, you don't need to wait for governments to create some type of gold standard, whether you're in the US, you're in the EU, you're watching this from the Philippines or Singapore or Japan, Australia, wherever a viewer is at. We can all as individuals buy physical gold, buy physical silver. I recommend to have a model King Solomon. He said, divide your portion into 7 or 8, for you don't know what fortune will happen on the earth. He was the richest business person of all time. So he is worth listening to when it comes to economic strategy. He also said that the wise see danger and they take precaution. The fool will keep going and they will suffer for it. And so in some translations, the simple will keep going and they'll suffer for it. So the wise thing to do is divide your portion in 7 or 8. If you're an American, don't keep all your money in US dollars. Have some physical gold and silver, have some digital gold and silver. If you're in the EU, don't keep all your money in euros. Do the same diversification. Or if you're in Singapore, don't keep all your money in Singapore dollars. So wherever you are in the world, I think it's important to just diversify your holdings, because you never know what foolish decision a government may make that can affect the purchasing power of your local currency. I think that's just a wise thing for all of us to take into account.
Well, particularly with central bank digital currencies on the horizon, that means they are going to control everything that you have, everything that you do, everything that you buy, sell. They'll control taxation by controlling your bank account, etc. But even beyond that, you end up losing privacy. Mm-hmm. Which is one of the things that fascinated me about what you're doing, because it is a digital currency, and I have not been a big supporter of digital currencies and the main reason is they are essentially, for the most part, as fiat currencies. Mm-hmm. That is, they haven't got a backing except of some mythical standard. What you're doing is completely different. Tell us how Goldcoin Plus is different than so many of the digital currencies that are out there that have no more backing than dollars.
Yes. Thank you for that question, Jake. If you look at the 7,000 plus digital tokens that are out there, besides Bitcoin and 6 coins that are backed by gold and silver, all the rest of them are just based upon their value is based upon what someone is willing to pay for it. Elon Musk tweets about Shiba Inu or some other token and it shoots up in value. But it's all just about people getting excited. And sometimes literally it's almost like, I would say 85%, 90% of crypto is sort of a lottery mentality. People are buying some little small coin, hoping it pops up in value like they hope they get a winning lottery ticket. If you look at the original reason Bitcoin was created, it was to create a limited currency that people could transact with together without government interference. There's really a libertarian, freedom-loving foundation of the creation of crypto tokens. But other than Bitcoin, which is limited to 21 million coins, every other token besides those 6 that are gold-backed is backed by nothing. They're fiat, just like you said, like any other currency you could buy. So my best friend died a year ago, and he used to work on multi-billion-dollar infrastructure projects in the Philippines, where he is from and where my wife is from. And I asked God to give me a bigger vision to honor his legacy. Jake, I had never had any desire to work on multi-billion-dollar projects, even though by God's grace, like when I published my last book, Beyond Billions, I did speak to 3 billionaires, and by God's grace, I've talked to 25 since then, one-on-one. So I seek wisdom, and oftentimes if you're in business, billionaires can give you the best strategy because they've done business at large scale. So within that journey of asking God for a bigger vision, the idea that God gave me was to tokenize gold while it's in the ground. Now, every other gold-backed token that you can buy right now, you can buy Tether Gold and several others. You can go on Vaultoro.com, and that's literally gold vault. Oro is gold in Spanish, O-R-O. Vault, VAULTORO.com is a website. You can buy digital gold and silver there. All the existing tokens are backed by gold and silver that are in vaults. The challenge is HSBC just came out with some gold token the other day. Zimbabwe announced that they have a new gold coin, which is really wise, and they want to create some type of a gold token. Again, governments move slow, and there are a lot of challenges. So what we're doing that's creative is there's not enough physical gold and silver for every single person in the world to own like 2 ounces of gold, which is like $4,000.
Right.
So if you're worth 100,000 and you want to divide your portion into 7 or 8, like Proverbs says, like Ecclesiastes says, one of Solomon's teachings, that means you're going to put 15, 20 grand in multiple things. There's not even enough gold for everybody to buy just 7 gold coins to put $15,000 in physical gold. There's more demand for gold right now than there is supply available, because central banks are buying gold like crazy. Every billionaire I know is buying gold, as much physical gold as they can get their hand on. There's just not enough to go around. So the solution that God gave us to do is fully verify gold in the ground. And then with those proven reserves, by the way, there is a way of measuring gold in the ground that is bankable. So there's a standard called a 43101, which is the most thorough measurement of the gold in the ground. When you do a 43101 and you have that 43101 independently audited, those gold reserves are bankable, meaning they're called proven reserves. So what we're doing is we're buying shares in a lot of different gold mines around the world, and we're tokenizing that gold by getting a 43101 that's audited. And then if you're buying a Gold Plus coin token, we call it GPC for short. Every GPC token you're buying, you know that token is not being sold to someone else. And if there's $10 billion of gold in a mine and we're selling $7 billion worth of tokens, you know that is a true finite amount of gold. And that gold not only will be measured and independently audited, but we're going to have drones ongoing monitoring every single one of our mines. So you can have assurance knowing your gold token not only is there in the ground when you bought it, but it's staying in the ground. So by God's grace, we've really just built a tech stack, if you will, of multiple layers of verification to create, our goal by God's grace is to create the most trusted gold-backed stable coin in the world. Just to give you an example, to put it in layman's terms, imagine if all the gold in Fort Knox was independently audited every single year, and there were drones inside of Fort Knox on those gold bars, so you know that they're there. There'll be a lot more faith in the value of the dollars backed by that gold. Because that's what we're looking to do with Gold Plus, to create the equivalent of that.
Yeah, and here's the problem with even with U.S. gold. You know, we've got a lot of gold on the books, but we came up with a very clever strategy to hide what we've really done. We have kept the gold on the books, but we've done a project called leasing gold. So that means we don't actually have it anymore. We have, quote, leased it, in quote, to other people. So it's not in the United States anymore, not in our vaults, not in Fort Knox, not in anywhere, except in the hands of other governments, other countries, other individuals, other rich guys, et cetera, et cetera. So while we still have it on the books, we don't actually have it. In your case, you actually have provable gold reserves sitting there. And now I can see the applications for this all over the place, but I see three main categories. One for companies. I mean, this would be perfect for securing pension plans because gold is forever. In fact, you go back to Genesis 2 and find gold. Number two, individuals. Individuals could have a currency. Listen, with the advent of central bank digital currencies, which are worthless and dangerous, having something like Gold Coin Plus would mean that you have a currency that is tradable because it is tokenized gold. In other words, it represents a gold coin. You just don't have to carry, 2 pounds of gold coins around with you. So it's tokenized gold, which means you can buy, sell, trade with it, which is interesting because you're outside of the system. It is, if you will, a gold-backed barter system, which is fascinating because exactly what Scripture says is possible with this particular asset. Within the system of the Antichrist, it says no man may buy or sell save he have the mark of the beast. But if you're outside of that system and you've set up a separate barter system with tokenized gold, you're not a part of their system anymore. So for individuals, what a remarkable thing to have. For companies, what a remarkable thing to have. But also, and perhaps most importantly, this does a miraculous thing for third world or impoverished countries that have plenty of assets, but no money to get to those assets. In other words, they haven't got the cash to develop those assets or exploit those assets. Pretty remarkable undertaking for them, isn't it?
Yeah, I always think that it's important that we think about, does something work at every level? So Gold Plus Coin, the reason how we came up with the name, we call it GPC, is we want to give people the benefits of gold plus the benefits of the portability of digital coins or digital tokens. So, I have a GPC token here. It's just fun to have a physical representation of what something is. This is about a little bit bigger than the size of a 1 ounce gold coin. I have some gold and silver coins right here on my desk, 1 ounce ones. Issued from Israel, a lot of different countries, China, US, Australia, Austria, etc. But when you look at the metals, the challenge of physical gold and silver is great just for storage and saving, and just for rainy day. God forbid. I live in Metro Detroit, Michigan. In 2011-12, like for 10 days, the grid from Detroit all the way over to New York was down for about 10, 11 days. If you didn't have cash, hard to buy gas, groceries, just basic stuff to live. And so if you had I have several friends who are stuck in different countries. Fun story, a friend of mine was flying back home to the United States for Thanksgiving back in 2019. And his ATM card wouldn't work. And like he couldn't order an Uber because his card wasn't working over, I think he was in Turkey. He remembered that he had like 10 1 ounce silver coins on him. He pulled one out, hailed a taxi and said, "Hey, how many of these do you need to get me to the airport?" He's like, "Give me 2 of those and I'm taking you." And he made his flight and got home. So physical gold and silver serves those purposes. When it comes to spending, especially international, like you said, bartering, having a sound 1-to-1 gold token and silver token, eventually we're going to build out an ecosystem of multiple tokens that you can just trade with someone else and buy something for $10, $20, $100 is important for the individual. So we want to give people the ability to buy, store, and spend digital gold much easier, especially internationally, than it is right now to spend it. If you have $100,000 of gold coins and you want to spend 50,000 of them to make an investment somewhere, you have to go sell your coins to a local guy, get the cash, or have him wire your account, wait for that money to hit your account. That takes 2-3 days, then wire the person overseas. Imagine that whole same process could be done in 5 minutes. That's what Gold Plus Coin will allow you to do. Internationally, without banks getting in the way, spend money and barter, like you said. Now, when it comes to governments and even the banking system itself, I've met one of the Rockefellers. Central banks are humans too, and central bankers are not a monolith. They don't all want to march towards CBDCs. A lot of countries in the Middle East and Africa, and basically, east of Africa, want to have more sovereignty in their individual currency. So that's encouraging to me that a CBDC being rolled out by 2030 and trying to control the whole world with that, a la the WF's Agenda 2030, you'll own nothing and be happy. I think that many nations will likely look to try to force their citizens to use CBDCs. I'm encouraged, Jake, that 2 years ago they rolled out a CBDC in Nigeria. Only 2% of the population used it. Now, like 40% of their population uses Bitcoin. So in a country where a lot of people like digital tokens, they rejected their nation's CBDC. So I'm encouraged by that. So I think it's important for us as citizens to realize we should do what we can to have as many types and forms of monies to trade together that give us freedom and sovereignty, because God gave us all inherently as human beings sovereignty over our own bodies. And it's good for us to be smart and use cash, use physical gold and silver, like use money that is freedom promoting and freedom supporting. And that's what Gold Plus Coin plans to do. Be one of those types of money you can use with other people to have freedom. And by God's grace, we can influence a couple of nations. And we've already been invited to speak to the presidents of 6 nations. A friend of mine asked me last week that I want to go with them to another African nation in a few weeks to go to the inauguration of some new presidents. So I think that by God's grace, we may be able to help 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 countries eventually monetize $10 billion to $50 billion worth of their gold reserves that currently they don't have a way to monetize.
Yeah, and it keeps China out of their keeps them out from under the shadow of China and Russia and what they're doing. And while I agree that we need to replace the SWIFT system with a much better system, I'd hate to see them fall prey to the likes of Russia and China, particularly for what China has in mind for all these nations. But beyond that, even when you look at Bitcoin has shown extreme volatility in the value of its coins. I mean, they can explode one day, plummet the next. I see the real value of what you're doing is stability, because you know exactly how many coins you're putting out, because you know exactly how much gold you've got in reserve at any given time, and there is no volatility. It's tied to gold. Whatever gold does, it does. Bitcoin has a tendency to just all of a sudden roar up and then collapse back down. I see one of the great assets for this is that it's based upon reserves, number one. Number two, it helps small countries and small investors out. So we're not having to compete. Well, actually, it gives you the ability to compete with the big boys in New York and Chicago and Los Angeles and London and Paris and whatnot, because you're all on a level playing field.
Yeah, I think that what's nice is every time we buy a new mine and verify the mine's reserves, what we're doing is we're fully securities compliant in the US, EU, and in the UK and Japan. Those are the 4 most stringent jurisdictions in the world when it comes to tokenomics. And so we actually have a patent on our process of tokenizing the in-ground gold. I believe we are the first one that has that patented system, plus GDPR, which is some European standard compliance for digital tokens. So we take compliance with regulatory bodies very seriously. That adds to the stability of our token. But the other thing is we're tying the value of our token to the price of gold. So I'm almost 50 years old. If you study economics and you study it very diligently, you'll realize eventually that every single market is manipulated. At first, it's discouraging and it can even be a little depressing. But once you realize it, it's like, hey, I know the game that I'm playing now. I know the rules of the game. Anything can be manipulated. So then the question becomes, what are the things whose price changes the least despite knowing it's manipulated? Gold is one of those things. In the last decade, from 2010 to 2011, I was in the Philippines in 2012 when it peaked out at 1,600. It had gone from 1,100 to 1,600. It fell back to 1,200, 1,300 range, and now it's up to 2,000. So that's 12 to 1,600 is only a 25% range of price. If you would have bought gold right at the peak at 1,600, you were only at a 25% loss. Again, this would be on savings, right? You'd only realize that if you sold some of your gold to buy something else. And if you're smart, gold should only be part of your savings, so no one should have to sell their gold and lock in a loss if there is a slight dip in the price. But like you just said, compared to Bitcoin, it can, since 2012, it's gone from $17 a coin. I almost bought some in 2012 when it was $17 a coin, up to 65,000, all the way back down to 4,000. Now it's at 40-something thousand again. I mean, literally a year ago, it was at 20,000. So it's all over the place. It's not built for savings because so many people buy it in bulk and manipulate the price. Gold is very hard to manipulate the price of. And by the way, 3 guys from Chase went to prison. 3 were convicted. I think 2 got pretty long prison sentences last summer for a decade of manipulating the price of gold. by selling a bunch of shorts in the futures market and suppressing the price of gold. So to this day, gold and silver are manipulated just like every other stock, commodity, cryptocurrency in the world. But if you look at all of that, gold is one of the most stable things you can buy as part of your savings portfolio of really of anything in the world. That's why we decided to start by tokenizing gold first. And once, by God's grace, we've sold a few hundred billion of our tokens, now we could repurpose the tech stack that's fully securities compliant to other commodities that are also stable in value.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, and one of the things that even corporate America's got to love is that this is a much more environmentally friendly approach to gold because it is a huge difference between shelf gold, that is above ground gold, and below ground gold. And tokenizing below ground gold means that it doesn't have to be pulled from the ground to have value.
Yes, there's positives and negatives to everything. In the tech industry, they call it do a SWOT analysis: strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Most entrepreneurs are very, very positive, so they usually we tend to focus on the strengths and the opportunities. But it's really vital that we address the weaknesses and the threats. The weakness of above ground gold, like you just pointed out, very expensive, technical, dangerous, costly to pull it out of the ground. I have a Christian friend whose brother and cousin died while they were mining gold in West Africa, in his home country. That happens every day in the Philippines. Small scale miners are literally digging with a shovel and a pick into the side of mountains. And sometimes the mountain caves in on them because they don't have proper equipment to stabilize the roof above them, and they just fall in on them and kill them. Happens every day. And so we are not only reducing the human cost of lives, but also the cost of gas, equipment, the mining equipment, all these different things, environmental things. Oftentimes there are things that go into the water from the tailings sitting there. This is the leftover rocks after they crush the rocks and take the minerals out of them. Oftentimes that will give people all kinds of diseases. So we're really reducing the human cost of mining by tokenizing gold in the ground. A positive of it is you can have it, you can put it in your vault, and gold in a vault is bankable. This is why we plan on buying our own banks, both commodity banks and retail banks. But the benefits of the weaknesses and the threats are people die, very expensive. Experts are saying that they think gold mining may be unsustainable by 2050. Like most of the easy to mine without a huge cost of just a big jump in the technology of the equipment would be necessary to keep mining gold. So that's not very long if you look at human history. That's 30 years from now, less than 30 years. So what we're looking at doing is there is about $13 trillion worth of gold above ground, but there's another 13 trillion worth in the ground, and more is always being discovered because there are a lot of new technologies being used to measure minerals in the ground that we didn't have access to 15, 20 years ago. So, just to give you an example, if the weaknesses and the threats of physical gold, the cost and the unsustainability of this technology to get to it, and the human cost, we fully address those things and eliminate them by tokenizing the gold in the ground. So it provides liquidity to governments, fully compliant with regulations and individuals. And second of all, we're also helping people have that portability, that spendability of the gold across borders much easier. So when we looked at those weaknesses and threats of physical gold mining, that's where a lot of how we built our tech stack came from. How can we provide greater safety, greater abundance, and greater freedom for both individuals, large-scale investors, and governments, including even central bankers. So we looked at all four of those levels because really the world banking system needs more physical gold, more physical money, which, in the U.S. Constitution, it's gold and silver, backing the currency. The more verifiable gold and silver we have backing the currency, the more stable the currencies can be. Provided governments also have some wisdom and don't spend more than they bring in. That's the other part of the equation when it comes to national.
Yeah, and that as you know, with our government, that is our Achilles heel, because they're always trying to buy the future power. But you remember we fought a war with England, and one of our major complaints was taxation without representation. Well, we're taxing future generations that haven't even been born yet, and we've taxed them already to the tune of $33 trillion that they'll have no benefit from, but they owe the debt for. So listen, I could see a day, quite honestly, David, I could see a day when you guys are working with sovereign banks around the world, and this literally becomes the currency they use to buy, sell, and trade globally. This is a masterstroke idea that has needed to happen for some time, and it is such a boon for. Look at all the small countries across Central America, South America, Africa that have in-ground assets. They simply cannot afford to get to them. So the Goliaths like China and other countries come in, our big, huge mining concerns. They come in, exploit the country, because they can't afford to do it on their own. They exploit the country and walk away with the wealth of nations at practically no benefit to the country, except perhaps a few potentates in charge.
Yeah, if you look at human history, that really is our goal. Our goal is to, and I have to give God credit for it, because like I prayed for 2 months asking God, what could I do to honor my friend's legacy? And this is the idea that I received. So when you say a master stroke, I'll call it a master's stroke, right? I can't take credit for this idea. And by the way, in the last 7 years, like 5 or 6 other gold-backed tokens have been listed that were delisted because they were not securities compliant. Again, those were all backed by above ground gold, but they were delisted because they didn't have the securities compliance piece in place, which we do. But when you look at a poorer country, if you go back a couple hundred years, there used to be several hundred years, right? It used to be whoever had the best ships were taking control of resources in other parts of the world. They were exploring the most. First it was the Portuguese and the Spanish, then it was the French and the English, then it became the Americans. Post World War I, right? The English and the French spread up Africa and Middle East and were basically using their resources for themselves. And now you're in a situation where you have still a lot of French influence in a lot of African countries. Niger kicking France out of the country was a very big thing in the last few months.
Right.
But smaller countries are still finding ways to have more freedom, more autonomy, and not be as dependent on the bigger countries. So it's not about China being the bad guy or France or the US or any other country. I think powerful countries in general look to take control of resources. Sadly, it's a component of human nature. A lot of humans have a lack thinking and don't fully renew their mind and their heart, as the Bible talks about, to trust God's abundance.
Well, an empire has always been the dream of potentates. So,
But if you look at it, the other thing I wanted to mention about history, Jake, is in World War II, most people, all rich people from Asia, it was sort of like in Europe, they're like, hey, the smart place to keep your money is Switzerland. In Asia, they were like, hey, the smart place to keep your money is Singapore. Well, the Japanese took over and invaded Singapore, despite it being a British colony. They defeated the British naval ships and took all that gold out of Singapore. They stripped the wealth of all of Asia. So this is why I think you need to have physical gold and silver and have some in your physical possession. Don't just buy some SKR, safekeeping receipts from your investment advisor. Have physical that it's in your possession. Because if you got to buy a SKR backed by some vault somewhere, that gold could potentially be taken. So that's why I say have physical gold that is in your possession and have some digital gold. It's not either or. It's always an and. They just deal with different potential eventualities. But looking at that history piece, we're looking at just helping a small country have a more leverage to deal fairly with other countries. Because I'll give you an example. In the 1860s, the world was worried about peak whale blubber. Now they're worried about peak oil right now. They're worried about peak whale blubber. Like, we're running out of whales to get oil to light our lamps, to be able to see at night. Well, necessity, the mother of invention. Someone came along, and a few years later, they figured out how to make kerosene. All of a sudden, no more need to go hunt the whales. So the whales didn't die out, thank God. To heat it, give us light at night. Then the electric system came along. Then 40 years later after that, Rockefeller figured out, gasoline is like a byproduct of making kerosene. That's the fuel for automobiles that for the last 100 years have been a big part of creating so much abundance for the world. So we shouldn't worry about peak oil. We shouldn't worry about peak gold. We shouldn't worry about peak anything. We should trust that God will give us new and innovative ways to wisely steward and use the resources that he gave us. And I think that applies to, we can use commodities-backed tokens to help countries do business fairly together, and also individuals do business together fairly, where all shall prosper. Everybody can prosper and win. It doesn't need to be a win-lose. There can always be a win-win if we just upgrade our mindset that there's a lot of abundance around us. We just need to be wise in using it in a sustainable way.
Yeah, and a lot of that goes right back to the original point that I made, and that is a fairness in weights and measures.
Yes.
When you level the playing field, then you see the poor have opportunity, the middle class has opportunity, the rich have opportunity. Everybody has a level playing field, so everybody has a hand at creating what they need. How do folks get in touch with you? How do they get in touch with you? How do they get the tokenized gold? How do they go about the process?
Well, our website is goldpluscoin.com. People can opt in there. We have a report we give people, we send for free about how to diversify your money, being wise, modeling King Solomon. My name is David Roy Newby on that's ROY and NAWBY. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. What's the fourth one? Oh, Twitter. And then we have you can follow Gold Plus Coin on Twitter as well. Those are like the places to stay in touch with us.
And we of course will have the website on the videos all the way through, so that people know how to get in touch with you. David, what a pleasure it is to have you with us. What a wonderful idea, a wonderful concept of both diversification and the tokenization of actual gold reserves is both brilliant and forward looking. So a pleasure to have you. We will look forward to the next time. And closing thoughts, if you want to give one.
Yeah, I just want to share with people one last vision. There are a lot of challenges in the world right now, and we need to be sober-minded and deal with those challenges, for ourselves as individuals, for our families, for our cities, our states, our nations, even our whole industries. I think that it's good to think at a family level and at a national, international level. If you look at history 3,000 years ago when Solomon was the king of Israel, not only did he create a $4 trillion fortune in today's money. To put that in perspective, Rockefeller controlled 17% of the world's oil at his peak and was worth about $400 billion in today's money. So Solomon created 10 times more wealth than Rockefeller by innovating in the gold industry, not by taking over other nations and stealing their resources. What's neat about it is not only it wasn't like he was rich and everyone else was poor. The whole nation was rich. The nation of Israel was, I would say, the richest nation in the history of the world. There's not a single homeless person. A lot of people say America is the richest country in the history of the world. I would say for the last 250 years, over that much time, yeah. But for the 40-year period that Solomon was the king, Israel was the richest country in the history of the world. There was not a single homeless person. Everybody had a house, and gold and silver were as plentiful as stones. Could you imagine just walking down? It's like heaven. Could you imagine walking down the road and seeing a couple ounces of gold on the ground and just not even bothering to pick it up? That is how rich the average population of the nation was. So I think it's exciting for us to study the wisdom of King Solomon and apply it both as an individual and even for our nations. If someone who's a central banker or the president of the country sees this interview, I think it's really exciting to look to play the game of how much can we model King Solomon's wisdom and help the population of our country prosper the way the people of Israel did during Solomon's time of authority. I think that's a really neat thing to press into with what we're doing. It doesn't matter whether you're just worth 100 grand and you want to go buy 15 grand as gold and silver to be wise with your family, or whether you're, someone in charge of hundreds of billions of dollars of resources. I think that's a vision we should all emulate.
And we are out of time. Good having you with us, David. Folks will be back with a closing thought or two right after this short timeout.
So, you need a simple video to tell people about your business, educational institution, or nonprofit you run. But, you talked to one of those production houses, and they said it was going to cost way more than you ever imagined. Well, like many of you, we're independent business people and we understand what it takes to run a business or raise funds for a charitable organization, and we're here to help. Whether it's an effective email campaign, a video, short or long, or just a commercial for radio or television, we can help. Need a ghostwriter or help with a webinar? Yep, we can help with that too. Need copy for a website? article for publication, or adfomercial? We've got you covered. If you need it, we can help, and we'll keep your budget in mind as well. So visit our website at elitepowerpros.com. That's elitepowerpros.com, and relax, help is on the way.
Dr. Daniel Taylor is a specialist with 40 years of experience in examining bodies. In almost 90% of cases, he reports finding terrible parasitic infestation. These deadly parasites often live in the lungs, heart, liver, even the brain. Their colonies inhabit internal organs, and the larvae feed on the tissues of living people. That's why Sanus One created our one-of-a-kind wellness and BioCleanse formula that attacks disease and parasites that can cripple your immune system and destroy your vital organs. And their toxic waste can paralyze or impede your entire system. Our Sanus One formulas are designed for preemptive wellness and can bring dramatic results even for post-parasitic infestation. Protect your health and feel good again with Sanus One, Wellness and True Health Formula. Visit us at sanus1.com, that's sanus1.com.
For years, I listened to the Baker Report. It was cutting edge, and his rants, priceless. Now he's back and just as outspoken, and even more penetrating on the confluence of history, headlines, and prophecy. Check right here every Friday for the latest release of the Baker Report. Here's what some of his viewers had to say.
Wow, I'd forgotten how much I missed the Baker Report. Just hearing that voice made me happy.
Classic Baker Report. Fabulous. Just fabulous.
Jake gets it. It's headlines, history. It's about the unfolding of prophecy. The perfect way to end the week and start the Sabbath. Love it.
Join Dr. Jake Baker every Friday afternoon for the Baker Report. And don't forget to hit the like button. Then subscribe and tell a few hundred of your closest friends that the Baker Report is back every Friday afternoon on Rumble.
And we are back for page 3 of the Baker Report. Surely, this will be a volatile year. This is a year, as I have been warning you for many years, but particularly in the last year, for more than a year, that 2024 will be a year unlike any other. This, I believe, is a time when all creation will groan under the weight of our national and global sin. I see no good outcome for the U.S. in 24, and I fear that America will see massive civil upheaval, violence, and betrayal as never before. The left is determined to keep Donald J. Trump from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. We'll see unprecedented election rigging. They'll try to jail Trump, and if that doesn't work, well, then the unspeakable may become part of the plan. And what happens if they succeed? What will his supporters do? If they spectacularly rig the upcoming election and steal November 5th from we the people, what will his supporters do? If Trump is elected, what will the left do? If he implements his massive deportation program, what will the left do? If they throw him in jail, what will his supporters do? Meanwhile, violent anti-Israel forces have gathered both here in America and around the globe. Those forces will become more vehement and more violent as the war in Israel expands and becomes bloodier, more violent, and involves perhaps as many as half a dozen nations across the globe. It will not be World War III, but it will be the Psalm 83 war, which eventually will lead to a defeat of the entire Islamic ring around Israel. Europe will have to intervene to save what's left of the Arab nations around Israel in direct proximity to it. And sometime in that darkness, in that process of things, the darkness envelops America. If the globalists have their way, we'll be nothing more than chattel, collateral for the chattel mortgage of the United States, Inc. But Yahweh always finds a way for his people to survive and thrive. Obviously, our guest on page 2 of the Baker Report gave us the means and wisdom necessary to survive the coming economic upheaval heading our way. It's going to get bad, folks. Here's again, and I've shared this with you many times, but it's important. Here's how God describes these last days. Revelation 18. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Reward her as she rewarded you, and double unto her double according to her works. In the cup which she hath filled, fill to her double. How much she hath glorified herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her. For she hath said in her heart, I said as a queen, I am no widow. I shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judges her. And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication, and lived deliciously with her, shall bewail her and lament for her, when they shall see the smoke of her burning. They'll be standing afar off for fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. And by the way, the word city there actually is a reference to the country, the state. And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth her merchandise any more. The merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones, and of pearls, and of fine linen, and purple, and silk, and scarlet, and all tine wood, and all manner of vessels of ivory, and all manners of vessels most precious wood, and of brass, and iron, and marble, and cinnamon, and odors, and ointments, and frankincense, and wine, and oil, and fine flour, and wheat, and beasts, and sheep, and horses, and chariots, and slaves, and the souls of men. But as we've just seen and heard, soon we will have a new way of storing and protecting wealth. Soon we'll have a new way of escaping the global financial system with our new products from Sanus One that we're introducing right now. You'll be able to reclaim your health at sanus1.com. And now, most important part of all, your spiritual health. This is that year. No more pew sitting, no more bystanders. No more weak, effeminate Christianity. It's time for all of us to become soldiers of heaven. It's time that we dip our sword in the blood of the cross. Dip our sword of the Spirit in His blood. And go forth conquering and to conquer. This is the time of glorious battle. This is the time Scripture says that will be sung of during the millennial reign of the Messiah. This is that time. This is the time when warring angels are flashing across the heavens, and the time when all eternity will be settled, and we will rule and reign for 1,000 years with Messiah. Are you ready for victory? For miraculous delivery, and for walking out eternity's plan for your life? This, folks, is the time of heroes. The time of destiny. And you are a person of destiny. As we march together through these last few pages of the last few chapters of history, you and I march together to the tune of heaven. For the Baker Report, I'm Jake Baker. Until next time, good day, take care, Lord bless.